this evening. The first is on the winter storm URI questions. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the council. Last Monday night, the council adopted a resolution to do a 30-day stay of the fuel cost adjustment charges that were a result of the winter storm that impacted our community this past February. The council also asked for that item to be added to this agenda tonight just for some additional research and due diligence. So tonight we are joined virtually by Tom Robbins from our one of our lobbying firms, Strategic Capital Consulting. Following up on some of the questions the council posed last week, we asked Mr. Robbins to liaison with some of the key players in Jefferson City this past week, which he has done, and has a couple of updates to share relative to the council's questions. So Tom, if I could, I'll go ahead and defer to you and let you provide that brief update to the council.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Zach. Madam Mayor, members of the council, SEC's been, first of all, I want to make sure everybody's received the report because we've also provided a written one for your review, but I'll summarize it quickly. SEC has been in contact with the Parsons administration, the Public Service Commission, and the Missouri Public Utility Alliance, and is monitoring CARES Act and ARP funding through the budget process. On Thursday, we spoke to Governor Parsons' Policy Director, Kayla Hahn. She said that this is certainly on the governor's radar. And as such, earlier this month, the administration offered a budget amendment for House Bill 6 to include $50 million for the Municipal Utility Emergency Loan Program through DNR. So that's in House Bill 6. That's one opportunity for relief. I've also listed the exact language underneath that, section 15.103 in House Bill 6. It sets out that the Department of Natural Resources, the Division of Energy, for the loan program offers an interest-free loan, first come, first serve. So that's an option. This will have to be approved by the General Assembly by May 7th. That's the deadline for the budget. Once it's approved, the department can begin working on an implementation plan. There are two existing state programs of which you might be familiar, the Low-Income Housing Energy Assistance, LIHEAP, and also the State Assistance for Housing Relief, SAFER. This is available to renters and to landlords, and we've also listed the website for more information, and that's mohousingresources.com. So that's for your constituents who are either renters or landlords. For renters, eligibility is based, as you can imagine, on where you live, how much you make, whether you're without it, you're at risk for becoming homeless. So standard qualifications. Both programs have eligibility requirements, but the SAFER one allows higher income thresholds than LIHEAP. Scrolling down a little, on Friday, Governor Parson announced that LIHEAP is extending its one-time primary hearing payments through May 31st. Eligibility is for incomes up to 100% or 150% of the federal poverty line. And also to include Missouri households with an income of up to 60% of state median income. So we also wanted to point out that the governor, please note that in the governor's press release, which I believe you've seen, the release confused the federal poverty levels for Medicaid eligibility and LIHEAP eligibility. I just wanted to put that on our radar. We've also talked to the PSC. The PSC is investigating potential price gouging. Originally, the report was set to be filed on April 22nd. We believe they've advised that the report is being released on April 30th. We will, of course, provide that whenever it happens. And then finally, House Bill 15. This is what I'm working with MPUA on. House Bill 15 is a supplemental budget bill. It is possible that CARES Act funding from the first stimulus legislation that could go toward providing help with utility bills. It's also possible there will be funds available for modernizing the grid and broadband services from the ARP funding. Guidance, we anticipate guidance by May 7th. And that is the sum and substance of my report.
Okay, thank you very much, Tom. When we spoke with the governor's staff, the city manager and I, this is outside of the state, this is a federal issue, but FERC has an ongoing docket of investigation to look into a potential price gouging that might have occurred. So I wanted to just add that to your report. I did receive it, thank you, it was very thorough. If the council, we got it kind of mid-afternoon, so perhaps not everybody's had an opportunity to look at it yet. So I would ask if there's any questions for Mr. Robbins on what is currently happening in Jefferson City. Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Mayor,
Yes.
I promise that we will update on these as these dates come. Like by April 30th, we'll hopefully have the update to send you. So we will a rolling disclosure of this information.
Very good.
Will continue.
Okay, thank you. Mr. City Manager, anything else on this topic?
Yes, Madam Mayor, just very quickly also want to let the council know, based on some of the dialogue that the council had last week when discussing the aforementioned resolution, city staff has engaged a legal firm to provide us a quick analysis of the costs that were received and paid by the city relative to the fuel costs from the month of February. We anticipate having that assessment completed and provided to the council by the end of next week, so sometime around the 5th or the 7th of May. But once we receive that, we'll provide that to the council as well.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Comments? All right, very good. Thank you very much. Our next presentation is Tourism Economics. We'll present the Tourism Impact Study. Mr. City Manager. Yes.
Excuse me, I thought that Jim Nell was going to do a little presentation here and answer some of these questions.
Oh, I'm sorry. Were we not done with that topic, Mr. City Manager?
I'm happy to have Jim come up. We didn't have any additional content from Jim this evening, but I can make him available for any questions or commentary, council member. That's not a problem.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions I'd like to ask.
Certainly. Jim, if you would, please.
Yeah, Jim, last Monday was questioning what our peak during the storm was for them 3 days, the peak. And I had said something about how much energy did we receive from Iatan 2 and Nebraska 2 and our CTs. Did you ever come up with a number on what, I assume the 180 is correct, and what would be our amount there that we received?
I'll have to get back to you on that. I did get some reports back from staff. I don't have those with me tonight.
Well, I had mentioned that I thought like it was about 80 megs from Iatan and Nebraska, roughly 75 from our CTs, which I'd say 150, 155. So it seems like to me we went on the market for 20, 25 megs. Would that seem reasonable to you?
Well, again, that's not exactly how it works, Councilman. We buy all of our energy. All the energy that we supply for our load comes from Southwest Power Pool. And then in return, we get credit for what's being produced. So we don't actually go out to market for the difference. We get the entire amount from SPP.
Right, but our sales agreement says, okay, so we get 50 megawatts from so-and-so, and then that price goes up. Our purchase agreement says $30, it goes to $3,000. Understand, we pay the $3,000, but it also balances out at zero because we're part of that. So in the coal part, we should have no fuel adjusting as far as this gas part of it. I'm not saying that we're not I understand we're paying market price for it,
Correct.
but we're also receiving market price for it in our price agreement. But the question here I have, if my calculations are correct, 150, 155, and then we go up and beyond that. Okay, so what I'm asking here is, what did our solar and our wind do them days for these 3 days? 'Cause
Solar was very minor. I mean, most of the solar panels were covered in snow, and it was not, and it was overcast, so very little was produced by the solar farms. The wind farms were producing anywhere from 3 to 5 megawatts, so not very much.
So, according to what my knowledge here is, we should have about 30 megs coming from wind, and we only got 3. So we wouldn't have any wind in them days.
It's extremely rare that we get 30 at a time from the wind farms.
Okay. On the solar, we're supposed to get 10. You said that it was gloomy, but snow on it. Did anyone contact MCC to get the snow off of these? We're in a devastating time here. City was under a lot, and so was the whole system. Did anyone call them, or did we send anyone out there to clear the snow that we could use everything we could get?
Well, we do not operate the solar farms, so we would not have sent our people out there. Whether or not MC Power took any action, that I'd have to check. I don't know.
Did we notify them though and tell them we had snow issues on these at all? I mean,
I'll have to get back to you on that,
because
Councilman.
we had 10 megawatts there available. I'm just trying to figure out, because if I take 155, 150, and I throw another 40, I'm way over this 180. That's what's disturbing. And then we're paying $11 million for this bit of energy here.
Well, again, it's very rare that you get your full rated amount from either wind or solar, just because that's just not the way the physics works. But with our purchase power agreements, we have, the way the purchase power agreements work, we have up to a certain amount of energy, and that's based on if that facility is operating at full capacity.
Correct.
If they're only let's say with the Iatan we have 50 megawatts. If they're only operating at 50%, we may only get 25, not the full 50.
Sure.
Same thing with Nebraska City, the wind farms. It's proportional to their output. So if their output's reduced, so is what we receive credit for.
Sure, and that's my question. I would like to know what them numbers are during these peak times.
I'll check. I'll get back to you on that.
I'm not saying do it tonight. I'm saying when you come back
Right.
on the 8th or whatever. That's some of the questions I'd have. One other thing. Tenasca, you're familiar with Tenasca?
Tenasca
Are they
is
still-
our marketer.
A lot of people are not. They do a lot of advising for Power and Light and have been for years. Were they involved in any of this at all?
They were monitoring the market for us.
Okay.
Again, we don't participate in the open market the way we used to when they would actually broker for us. Essentially, what they're doing now is watching the market, advising us on what options we have. Because for example, at Nebraska City's agreement is a little different than the others because it predates the market. We do have some options where we can decide not to run our portion, or if they're not running, we can ask for our portion. So those are market decisions there. But Tenasca, for the most part, they monitor the market for us and let us know what the conditions are.
So they still are involved in our advising?
They are still on. We do have them as one of our consultants.
Another thing I've found here is on the fuel adjustment charge. The amount of money, you said the average person would pay $10.
$10 above.
It's 600 kilowatt hours. So I've seen a couple of bills. I've had a few people contact me, and it went from like $12 to $32. It went from 600 kilowatt hours to 800. So I think some people are misguided here a little bit, that we're talking about a percentage. So a person with a $100 bill will be paying $130 to offset this. It's basically a third added on.
No, sir. The fuel adjustment charge is, in this bill that went out, the fuel adjustment charge was 3.99 cents per kilowatt hour.
Right.
It's typically been somewhere around 2.5, 2.6, in that range. So the 3.99, what we estimated as the $9 to $10 impact is the increase over what the FCA already was for that person with a 600 megawatt or kilowatt hour bill.
Okay.
So whatever your FCA, whatever your on your bills, you can see month to month the FCA charge. All else being equal, this one would have been, for a 600 kilowatt hour bill, would be about $9 above what it was previous.
Okay, so the bill that was sent to me was 800 kilowatt hours. The bill was $98.70, and the FCA was $31.31. So I just want people to be aware that it's not $10.
Right, it's $10 in
that-
addition to what it was previously.
Okay. One other thing, and then I'll roll on here. I had a couple ideas here about this. I believe in the methodology too, and I know that's how all these utilities survive, but I've asked around quite a bit, and so I would kind of like to see what your thoughts were, staff, on, or I guess the city manager in this case. We're looking at, I've called quite a few utilities, and they're having a lot of trouble getting in their equipment, and I assume we are too, as far as transformers, poles, street lights, stuff like that, due to the virus. I know lumbers and everything else is that way, but I've contacted a few utilities to see how they were coming along, because what I had in mind to try to help some of this along, maybe waiting on to see what the state does and some other things here, that maybe we slow down our capital projects, since we're not going to be able to fulfill them on the next budget. I don't know, we're probably pretty deep into them for this one, but I know we have College Street up there that has a phase 2 and stuff, that maybe we could get back this into reserves and maybe stand back a little bit if it's going to be, most months I'm hearing is anywhere from 12 to 15 months out. So a capital project, we're probably not going to be able to fulfill it for a year anyway. So if we could maybe look into that and see if them numbers are correct.
But I can tell you, we already are looking at the list of capital projects to see which ones are likely to actually happen and which ones could be delayed. We are looking at that actively.
And I said I was one other thing, but have we looked into maybe, instead of 6 months stretching this out, I've seen, the gas company and a few of these other people, Spire, and everybody's kind of pushing this so it's not such an impact. My biggest problem is if, besides the people out here that are struggling already in our businesses, so if a person has a $1,000 bill as a business, they've been running 50% capacity. Of course, that's changed with the mayor moving that to 100, but there's still staffing problems and stuff like that. But $1,000 light bill, they're going to be paying $1,300 roughly with the FCA on that. And so I'm just wondering if we could either look at, like I said, I'm not against getting it because I know that's how we survive, but maybe pushing it so we have a little more time rather than the 6 months, or put a cap on it so we're not just killing these people. I mean, we're going to have outrage when people come this summer in air conditioning and get these, $60, $70, $80, $100 bill higher than what they're normally paying.
And Councilman, that is what we discussed last Monday, is that we will take a look at this every month and adjust it accordingly to make sure that it's not overwhelming on the
Yeah,
ratepayers.
just food for thought. Like I say, when you come back on the 8th, some of the things I thought about.
It is, it sounds like not very much, the 0.39992 or whatever it is. But I went and looked at I use a lot of electricity, by the way. So my kilowatt hour is way above 600, but I mean, my fuel cost adjustment this month was $70 on a $125, electric bill. And last month it was $31. So, I mean, my kilowatt hour usage, that's up to me. I get that. I understand that. But it's sort of surprising how significant of an increase that is. When you really, and I just want people to be clear, because I've heard this several times myself, that they're expecting it to be $10. I mean, I just want people to be aware that, I mean, I'm telling you, mine went from $30 to $70. So that's a pretty big increase, and it's, that little bit of money adds up per kilowatt hour, depending on how much you use. And I mean, we all know these are, the high usage months are coming. I mean, they are coming. I'm pleased with the report that we got from Mr. Robbins. You know, there's a lot happening to help with utility assistance, of course. This is just a tough thing to you know, I mean, to really have an answer for. I mean, if you stretch it out for longer, that may help lessen the blow, but we would have to recalculate that 3,992, because it's gonna be charged at that rate no matter how long we stretch it out. And we can't suspend shutoffs forever. I mean, the summer's going to come, and we're going to get into days where it's hot, and we're not doing shutoffs and those types of things. But you know, I was confused, so I want to make sure that the public is not confused. That you're not going to see an extra $10. I mean, it's not going to be a $10 bill. Mine was a $40 bill. So, you know, I just want to make sure that people understand that. But I'm satisfied. I mean, you know, with the methodology, I just think that we need to take a look at this. I'm pleased to know that there's a lot of agencies in our state and across the nation who are looking at this, and that there's relief coming, but there's no relief coming for IPL. I mean, there's no relief coming for the $6.5 million of our ratepayers' money that we're kind of contributing to this, unless we pass that to the ratepayer too and let them go find their own assistance to pay it back. So, you know, I'm glad that we're taking this time to kind of look at and understand this very clearly. Are there other questions on IPL? Yeah.
Mr. City Manager, I know we have 30 days. We're a week into it. We're going to get a report Friday that I think would be worth probably reviewing and discussing amongst the council as well. In the next study session, if we could, be prepared just to talk about the relationship with IPL and SPP, but more importantly, I really want to talk about at some point, you know, what was IPL doing to ensure when prices went crazy? You know, what do we have in place to pay for overages and costs? You know, when we talked about hedging and, you know, the market and puts, and I just want us to learn from whatever we did right and whatever we did wrong, and because this is not going to be just a one-time event. I think anybody that believes that there's climate change knows that there's concerns looming at some point, whether it's a hot summer or another cold winter. And at some point I want to talk about how we managed through that, if we could. So maybe at the next study session we'd be prepared to talk about some of the things that we did management-wise within IPL, if that's agreeable to you. I don't want this to all be about SPP, because it's just a power pool. They don't have IPL's best interests at heart. IPL's best interests are our ratepayers, and we're the buffer between this pool that we're buying energy from and what we're charging. And we can see there's some things that I think we need to look into. So if it's acceptable to do that with you, I'd like to have that conversation.
Yeah, we'd be happy to add that for you, the council.
Thank you.
Mr. City Manager, could you also add on the topic of reinstating the credit card fee, please? As I understand, it's costing IPL $100,000 a month. And I know it was a temporary move and it's still going on is what I understand. So when we're discussing overall IPL and the costs, I think that's an important topic.
Just for the council's benefit, at the last Public Utility Advisory Board meeting, a recommendation was made to forward to the council to reinstate that fee, to pass that on to the consumers who use the credit card for payment. So based on their recommendation, we have a resolution with their recommendation for consideration next week, May 3rd.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, anything else? Okay, thank you. Now we will move on to the tourism impact study. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the council, I'll ask our Parks, Recreation, and Tourism Director, Eric Urfer, to come tee this up for us.
Thank you.
Hello, Council, Madam Mayor. I'm sorry I didn't catch much of that introduction, but I'm going to assume it was glowing and wonderful. And I'm Jeff Locker. I work for Tourism Economics, and we go around the nation and the world, studying the economic impact of tourism and destinations from cities to nations. And I think we're also going to briefly look at the forecast we did for you a few months ago of where we see the situation headed in the tourism sector. And I am going to be a bit on the brief side, as I have 2 toddlers that need to get put to bed in the near future, but I do want to provide some good highlights here for you. So a couple things to mention here. One, when we look at the impact of tourism, we're not just talking about the hotels and the attractions and the restaurants that tourists go to. We do what we call a full economic analysis, where we're looking at when the tourist money hits the ground here, how does it spread through the economy? Not just going to the restaurant, but the restaurant that needs to pay rent and buy supplies, and to the waiters and waitresses that, again, pay rent, buy groceries, and spend all that other money. So there's what the tourists are actually spending and how that directly impacts the economy, and then what we call the total impact, which includes all the downstream impacts of that initial investment. The other thing I want to emphasize is that this is a very an analysis that draws on a lot of different data sources. So we're looking at survey data on where people say they went and what they did while they were there. We're looking at Bureau of Economic Impact and Bureau of Labor Statistics data on what type of wages are paid locally in the tourism-specific industries. We're looking at STR data, which is a hotel analytics company that kind of keeps track on what hotel rooms are booked and how much is spent in hotels across the nation, and then tax receipts from the area on what people are spending. So all that, I'm going to jump a couple heads. This is kind of the big finding of what happened we're in 2019 now. So this is kind of your baseline year looking forward of, pretty soon, where do we want to get back to in a few years? Obviously, the tourism industry has been specifically hard hit with the recent recession. But the key findings are 139 million in direct tourism spending. Then after that hits the economy and spreads throughout the economy, that results in 224 million in total business sales. And then just looking at the total numbers on the right, 67 million in personal income and 2,000 total jobs sustained by tourism. And we should note that everything is growing quite rapidly. So when we started this, we went back 5 years to look at how things have been growing, and we're up 18% in visitor spending, 7% in visits, and 18% in tourism-related employment. So again, these were good years for tourism across the country, but they seem to be great years here. So nothing but good things to report before the pandemic. Again, here's that look at the 20 or 21% increase now back to 2014. Just good solid growth. One down year in 18, but in general, good strong growth throughout the years there. Then, just to give a quick look at what people are spending money on, lodging being the main source of spending, but also food, bev, transportation, recreation, and retail making up significant portions. A quick look at what's growing. Just looking over the last 5 years, the two things that stand out is lodging grew the fastest. That's what we've seen in a lot of destinations as hotel rates have increased, as demand increased the last several years. So hotel spending or lodging spending growing faster than other types of spending. And then, so you guys have good, the transportation spending kind of, it's slowed down lately as gas prices have fallen, but overall, looks pretty strong over the course of time. A quick breakdown of day and overnight visitors. The overnight visitors make up about 2/3 of the volume and a vast majority of the spending in 2019 and every year. And that overnight visitor spending is growing a little faster in the overnight section. Again, those hotel prices helping boost the overnight spending. And then just briefly to go through here, again, just details that are in the full report is, just going to look at exactly what segments are impacted. And again, something we always try to emphasize is that tourism doesn't just support the hotels and the restaurants and the attractions. This money spreads through and supports finance and insurance, business services, retail, manufacturing, wholesale trades. Once that money hits the ground here, it really does spread throughout the community and impact a lot of industries that aren't typically associated with tourism and travel. So this is the full breakdown of where the business sales occur across 18 sectors. And we have similar statistics for personal income and employment. And again, in these type of graphics, you can see the direct impact. So the people that are directly employed by tourism are in the dark blue, and then the knock-on effects, the added effects are in the light blue, the lighter two shades of blue. So you see something like food and beverage or lodging, the vast majority is direct impact. Business services, finance, insurance, real estate, the impacts are mainly indirect and induced, those knock-on effects. Also, a brief look at the taxes that are generated, 17.5 million in state and local taxes supported by tourism in 19. And I guess I could take some questions here before we move to the forecast. That might make sense.
Okay. Are there any questions to this point? Okay.
Sure. So this is the forecast we prepared. We've done this for, I don't know, several dozen destinations. We've done monthly forecast out for the next several years, and we do what we call a scenario forecast. And so the pandemic kind of put us in a situation where there's more uncertainty in our forecast than there had been in non-pandemic years, as you might imagine. So we create an upside, a baseline, and a downside forecast. The date on this is November 4th, 2020. So a lot's happened since then. And in all honesty, it's mainly trending towards the upside. Back then we did not have a vaccine announced, and those have been Several have been announced, and they're effective, and they're getting dispersed pretty quickly. And also, I think most economist shops at us at Oxford Economics, Moody's, Goldman Sachs, IHS, everyone wanted, on the economic side, wanted a stimulus package, and we're getting more stimulus. So that is also pushing us towards the upside and making the downside scenario seem increasingly unlikely. But looking in the near term, this is hotel revenue on the top two charts and hotel demand in the bottom two charts. We expect hotel demand and visitor numbers in general to return to normal or to 2019 levels around 2023. Hotel revenue and visitor spending maybe a year later, 2024. So we're still looking at a fairly lengthy recovery out of this. But even as the vaccine gets distributed, we're going to be, we're saying that we're going from the horrific levels we've experienced over the past year to normal recession bad levels. That's going to happen very quickly over the next 6 months or so. So, things are finally looking up. I should say, along with kind of summary charts, each of these scenarios has monthly details for a lot of metrics. So we've gone ahead and we've estimated what the impact on visitor spending is going to be, along with jobs, wages, state and local taxes, and also for those in the hotel sector, kind of the key metrics there, which are the occupancy rate, the average daily rate, or how much does a room cost to book on average, and the revenue per room. So we have all those forecasted by month over the next or through 2022. And that's the quick sum of the forecast. Happy to answer any questions there as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there comments or questions from the council? No.
Okay, just as a follow-up to that, we did take a real serious look at those projections and actually use those as part of our own projections for this fiscal year, as well as the next 2 fiscal years coming. So this fiscal year, we did project 30% down in transient guest tax as a result of this study. We've been tracking that monthly, and we are on pace just exactly at that. So through the first 3 quarters of the year, we're trending at 30% down our typical transient guest tax revenue. Mm-hmm. Now, that's for this budget year. If you look at that compared to over the course of the last 5 years and take an average, we're actually 41% down that 5-year average. So a little bit more on the overall bigger picture than just the budget year when you just look at one snapshot year. But there is recovery coming. We had made adjustments to that 30% reduction well into this current fiscal year. So we kept a couple things closed. We deferred some hirings of some positions. We took our monies associated with our historic site maintenance, transferred that over to park sales tax for a year, et cetera, so that we can meet our bottom line and not have to draw on reserves too much. We're still going to draw on reserves a little, but not as much as if we wouldn't have made those adjustments early on. So we're watching those trends throughout the rest of this fiscal year, but it really looks like we're going to come in right around that 30%. For next year, according to the economic impact study, we're planning on 16% down. We have budgeted accordingly for that, so we'll be a little bit shyer on that next fiscal year. The year after that, we're still 7% down. And then, as Jeff indicated, it's not until that 23-24 fiscal year that we're anticipating being at pre-pandemic rates of receipt for transient guest tax. So we're keeping an eye on it. We're budgeting accordingly. And so far, the trends that were projected in the study are exactly what we're seeing here on the ground in Independence.
Eric, can you tell me on just a regular year, not the years that you talked about where we did better than budget over the 5-year trend, so that's why it's showing we're 40% down rather than 30% down. But just so everybody has sort of a concept of this, how much do we generate in revenue through the transient guest tax in a just average year?
Average year is 1.92, so a little over 1.9 million a year.
Okay. We'll just call it 2 million.
Okay.
Okay.
Optimistic.
Okay, I mean, I just think it helps for people to understand what kind of money we're talking about. Okay,
Yeah,
thank
so
you.
with an annual rate of receipt of 1.9 million, when you start looking at those percentage decreases, that adds up to quite a bit of money, which is why, unfortunately, some things have been held closed for a little while, some positions have been deferred. Tourism is a single source funded operation. So transient guest tax is the only revenue that tourism has as a whole division to operate on. So when we see significant drops in the transient guest tax, that directly impacts our ability to produce our services in that division.
What would you say is the biggest driver to people being in our hotels?
Kansas City Royals, traditionally that is it. We had a couple of years ago, and we've actually extended that as well. We had some very targeted marketing going on with the Royals. Stay in our city while you go to the Royals, and then while you're here during that stay, by the way, here's all the other things to do while you're here. So it's been a very successful campaign, actually. It's working well.
Great. And what about youth sports?
I'm sorry?
What about youth sports, like youth sport, I mean, using our ball fields and hockey facilities and all that?
Yes.
Is that a strong driver?
It is a fair driver
Okay.
of bed nights. We are uniquely positioned in that we are in the middle of several large outdoor softball and baseball complexes. There's one in South Liberty, there's one in Lee Summit, there's one in Blue Springs, there's a Adair Park right here in Independence, plus our own that we use as overflow. So we're right in the middle of all of that activity. So when there's a large tournament going on at any of those places, our hotels most definitely see an increase.
Okay, thank you. Other questions or comments?
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Eric, could you tell us a little bit about National Frontier Trails Museum? I read in the Examiner we're not planning on opening it for the rest of this calendar year.
Yes, for the reasons we just covered, we are going to have that facility remain closed. But let's identify closed. Let's define that just a little bit. So it's closed to the public. So as far as walk-in traffic, but we do have the ability to do special tours for pre-arranged groups that are coming into town, or pre-arranged groups that are right here in town. Also, we're perfectly positioned to still do special events there as well. For example, our tourism division has been out doing a number of different virtual conferences and things of that nature, bus tours, things of that nature, and they already have secured 6 or 8 groups that are coming in town here later this summer that have requested special tours of the National Frontier Trails Museum. So we will, with full-time staff, divert our staff from their daily duties while those folks are here, and we'll staff that museum, and we'll give those tours, and we'll give those folks those experiences.
Is that going to be advertised? So like, if I know a group is coming, perhaps I can, as a private person, also arrange to tour the museum that day?
It's possible, depending on the group and the size of the tour, and also the restrictions that we may still be under from a capacity standpoint at that point in time also. So that might be a little tricky, just to open the doors completely on that day, just for control mechanisms. But we certainly can offer potentially some special days where it might be open for some special tours for local folks as well.
When are we looking at opening it?
So most of those tours that I just talked about were happening in September.
I
of
meant
this
to
year.
me, the private person who lives in Independence, I'm not on a tour, but I want to go to the museum. Are we looking, do we have a date certain that we're definitely going to be opening up the National Frontier Trails Museum?
At this point, from a budgetary standpoint, it looks like FY22 before that happens. So
Say it one more time.
not next fiscal year, but the fiscal year after that. So it will remain closed just as a general walk-in facility in our proposed budget through next fiscal year.
Through all of 22?
Yes, for the reasons that we just covered in that loss.
Have we looked at alternatives? Have we
Yes.
looked at management companies?
We have, as a matter of fact, and next year, not next year, but the year after that, we do have planned in the budget some accommodations for management fees. We do not have that in the budget next year. So
Why not?
Well,
We have $750,000 in reserves, right?
We do.
If we got a management contract for $150,000 to even do a part-time, like I know the Bingham and the Vale are opening, I believe, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Correct.
Even if we did that for 4 days,
Well, we can certainly take a look. Although we were watching those trends very closely, we are still dipping into reserves, as mentioned earlier, just to meet the bottom line and to meet our financial obligations this year. We will do that again a little bit next year, even with the 16% instead of 30% decrease. So dipping into reserves makes us a little bit nervous. We don't want to draw those down too much so that we can ensure that we can still meet our financial obligations for marketing and things of that nature.
is Independence doing anything to celebrate our 200th birthday as a state?
We are working on a couple of plans, and we can certainly be open. We were planning on being open for that event, whatever that event might be.
It's
well.
August 3rd is our 200th birthday as a state, and August 4th. It's August 3rd is the date. Are we celebrating it August 10th?
Never.
We are working, our branding committee that has been meeting has some things planned
Great.
for the bicentennial. We have been working with the bicentennial committee. We haven't gotten to the point where they're saying what events they're going to hold across the state. It's not our anniversary, it's the state's anniversary. There's a bicentennial committee that's been working for a number of years to plan events. Obviously, COVID had an impact on that as well, but we have been working closely with that committee, waiting for them to tell us what types of events are going to be planned that we can participate in. But yes, our branding committee has discussed ways that we can participate in some events that have already been announced for those days. And I know that the Puppetry Arts Institute is planning to do an event, and we've been working with them to see if there's a potential way that we could accommodate that at the National Frontiers Trails Museum. And we have indeed, and to my understanding, made arrangements. It's not until August, it's only April. But we're hopeful that we're going to be able to accommodate them with limited capacity, which they seem to feel would be adequate for the event that they're having. So yes.
And on August 4, we're having the Solar Car Challenge.
That's right.
Which is a fairly big deal, which I don't have engineers in my family, so I didn't even know about it until somebody said, what about that? I guess they're following the Santa Fe Trail from Independence Square all the way to New Mexico.
Yes.
And that's going to be August 4.
Yeah, and obviously, those are exactly the type of things that we will make sure that we have the museum open for those special events. It's that day-to-day ongoing presence that it will be very difficult for us to fund next fiscal year. Those one-off events, those special tours, those types of things, that can occur. It's just the day-to-day operations being open like we traditionally were prior to the pandemic that is going to be very challenging.
And Eric, I want you to know I've given you a hard time throughout the years. We are really going to miss you.
Thank you.
We are really going to miss you a lot. So thank you for everything.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. It's
We're
my
not
pleasure.
ready to say goodbye yet.
No, I got
we
one
have
more
a couple
left.
weeks left.
You can grill me,
I
grill me next
concur,
week.
yes. Yeah, thank you, Eric.
Do we have Kim? Okay. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to our tourism manager, Ms. Christy Franz, please.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council members. We have been asked to present you all with the video that we did with our Paranormal Path campaign. This campaign was one that we tried to focus on Independence as an alternative type a tour for people to come in and see things they hadn't seen before. So we came up with a campaign that focused on the Vale Mansion, the Bingham Wagner Estate, and the 1859 jail and marshal's home. And so we completed this campaign and submitted it for an award with the Hospitality Sales and Marketing Association International for the Adrian Awards. And it is like the World Series, basically, of hospitality and marketing. advertising. So we ended up winning a gold award, which is the top award. And we beat out some cities like Tampa, which is appropriate for this last year. So we would like to share that video with you. I'm not sure if it is pulled up here. And we are going to be moving forward with Paranormal Path because it was so successful. And we'll have a Paranormal Path Part 2. We're getting ready to film that at the end of May.
What draws? What draws your eyes to the open door across the room?
Thank you.
Well, we're going to show the video here in the chamber, and those that are watching online, we can share it on our website.
What draws your eyes to the open door across the room?
Why can't you look away from the darkness beyond the door frame?
What's there in the shadows that has so captivated your worry?
Can you feel it coming closer?
The dread tugging at your thoughts. That's the past.
The wounded past.
Pulling the veil between you thinner and thinner until it's thin enough for you to see just how close they truly are.
Come sit with Sophia Vale and admire her elegant mansion. Ignore the shifting shadows. Those are merely stains left over from the mental patients once locked in the basement.
Come, walk through the 1859 jailhouse. These little cells aren't as empty as they appear.
Come wander the grounds of the Bingham Wagoner estate, but watch your step on the stair. They've proven to be treacherous.
Come visit Independence.
We're waiting.
For you.
So I'm sorry our technology didn't cooperate. It is a really cool campaign. It really is. And so go out, and it's a huge, huge achievement, Christy, to be honored in this way. This is like, you know, the Oscars, the Emmys, the Tonys all in one. So congratulations, a really, really terrific job.
Anybody else have any
Anything
questions?
else?
Hopefully you can send it out, but the goal of this campaign was to pay homage to the city's history while differentiating independence from its competitors and creating an attraction for a niche market that had not been previously interested in coming to the area. And when we got the results back from this campaign, our marketing team had never seen anything like it before. And we've had people on our team that have, with Madden, who have been working for Madden, you know, for close to 20 years, and they've never received a gold award or seen the impressions, et cetera, that we got for this campaign, even in a year where, you know, our revenues were down, et cetera. But even just on the YouTube view, they were hoping to get maybe 80,000 views, and we got 150,000 views just on the YouTube alone. So it was very successful, and we're really happy with the results and look forward to the next step.
Great, thank you. Mr. St. Manager, does that conclude this portion of the meeting?
Yeah, maybe next week we'll have City Theater act out the video.
That would
for
be
you,
good.
so
I
just
like
to
that.
make up for that.
We
yeah.
can do it out in the
Okay.
parking lot.
That's right.
That would be good.
Other than that, nothing else
So
tonight.
then we can, they don't have to wear masks while they're doing
That's
it.
right.
All right, on that note, anything else this evening?
Nope, we'll get out of here.
All right, we're adjourned.